Greetings to all of you. In this video, I want to take time to reflect on this accelerating time of change that we're in and how we can navigate it individually and in community with each other. How we can understand the intensity of this time that we're in and have practical ways to support us as we're moving through this time of transition and transformation. I think this is important for all of us to continue to see and hold the context of this time that we're in. Part of why I'm so deeply invested in understanding and sharing about the meaning of the precessional cycle, this 24,000 year cycle that we go through here on the planet, is because I think it helps us understand where we are now and what we're experiencing in this intense time as we're moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, as we're at the end of one 24,000 year precessional cycle, the beginning of a new one, as we're also exiting as of March 20th, 2025, the last 6,000 years of the Kali Yuga, that part of the precessional cycle where we're at our lowest level of consciousness as humanity. And now we're in this accelerated time of movement into remembering who we truly are, reconnecting with ancient wisdom, moving into higher consciousness, and co-creating a new world together. We're all feeling it, and it is an incredibly intense time. As we're in these profound shifts, we're in the in-between state. It's a liminal time as we're ending these cycles of one precessional cycle to a new one, coming out of the Kali Yuga, moving into a new age, the age of Aquarius. We feel the disorientation and confusion of realizing our identity from the past, individually and collectively, no longer fits. Yet it's not clear yet what the new forms are. So we can feel like we're in this time of deconstruction, reconstruction, transformation, but it can be very disorienting. It can be very confusing. It can be very chaotic. And it is very much like that experience of the caterpillar dissolving in the chrysalis to become the butterfly. When we're in that chrysalis state, as we're in now collectively as humanity, we can feel like everything's a mess. Everything is dissolving. The caterpillar's realizing I don't have a body anymore and my legs aren't functioning and I'm just a soupy, gooey mess. And we can feel that way sometimes within ourselves. I know I do some days. I think, I don't know what I'm doing or what's happening. But when we can hold the larger context that we're in, then we know we're being reformed, reconfigured, restructured to emerge as butterflies, to be moving into new ways of being. This is what the Peruvian shamans talk about becoming homoluminous ones, beings of light, when we remember that we are of the stars and that light and wisdom of the cosmos is within us, and we can live from our hearts and emanate that love and wisdom and remember the meaning of living in harmony with all that is. This is what we're moving towards. This is what we as a community are supporting each other in. And I am so deeply grateful for this community because I do feel that we are awakening and we're a part of this larger awakening happening around the globe, which allows those of us who are opening to higher consciousness, to be coming more and more from our hearts, to be remembering who we truly are and why we're here, and then to be emanating that love and compassion and healing energy into the morphogenic field, into the collective consciousness. That supports the healing of the world and supports our together as humanity waking up, healing, transforming, moving into higher consciousness. And I want to say that in some of the times where I feel overwhelmed and disoriented and discouraged and in pain with the suffering going on around the globe in the midst of this transition time, it gives me such hope and joy when I feel the heart to heart connections within this community with each other, in interactions with those that I'm interacting with in this area who remember what it means to come from the heart, to engage in that way that is coming from love and compassion, not ego, not a need. Here, I'll do this for you, you do this for me, transactional interactions, pure coming from the heart. I see you, I hear you, I love you, I want to empower and support you. Oh, thank you for seeing me, hearing me, empowering me. That is the true healing energy that can support us and be what's transforming and healing the world. But in the midst of this transition time, I know and honor the level of sensitivity and compassion that I experience in this community and that so many of us are feeling as we're in this turbulent time. And we're not only seeing and feeling the awakening that's happening, but we feel and see that as we're exiting the Kali Yuga, it's as if the worst shadow aspects of humanity are coming to the surface. I think to purge, to be cleared, so that we can release them and heal and move in an integrated way into these new forms and new ways of being. But as we're witnessing that, and I know that many of you try not to be too exposed to the news and that level of negativity and fear. And I know that many of you who are deeply sensitive and empathic are feeling what's going on in the collective consciousness, even if you don't tune in to the news. I know that's true for me too. And part of what I think is happening in this shift that we're in is the veils between the worlds are thinning, and we more fully feel that awareness, not just in an intellectual way, but in an energetic and empathic way, that we are all interconnected. So, what is happening in Gaza or Sudan or these other parts of the world where there is pain and suffering, we feel that too, even if we're not in the midst of the agony that people actually living there are going through. So, part of what I want to talk about today is how do we hold that empathic attunement, that sensitivity and compassion, and not get pulled down by that or mired in that in a way that disables us then and is not in service to those who are in the midst of that trauma. How do we deal with the trauma in the world right now? How do we heal and clear the trauma in our own lives? Because I truly believe that part of what we're doing right now in this shift is being called to see how we've gotten so out of balance and how we can heal to come back into balance and wholeness to move into these new ways of being. Part of why exploring, understanding, diving deeply into the meaning of the precessional cycle is so important to me is because I believe it gives us a context for understanding our history as humanity and how we got to where we are right now and how we can work with it and what it all means. One of the things that I realized as a psychologist is that our core sense of personality and sense of self forms by about age 3. Not that later experiences don't impact us or help forge who we become or some of our personality patterns or characteristics. But I know from my experience and deep dive into developmental psychology that so many of those formative early experiences in those first years of life are what form that core sense of self that we then carry with us throughout our lives. Can that heal? Can that change? Absolutely. Or I wouldn't have been on the path of healing and doing the work that I was doing. And my belief as an astrologer is in between lives, we choose the energies that we want to come in with for our own growth and evolution as a soul self. And that some of these patterns that we experience and traumas that we experience often early in our lives are repeating a past life theme or trauma that we're determined to become aware of and clear in this lifetime. And it's profound when we realize that our soul self is always with us, trying to guide us through these lessons, these experiences, even these traumas to help us heal and grow and deepen in love and wisdom. But part of what I know as a psychologist is those early experiences, often those pre-verbal traumas, have such a formative impact, but we don't remember them. Because until the development of language, the young child, infant, toddler doesn't know how to formulate in words or understand this happened to me and this is how it's impacted me. We absorb it and it gets internalized in a way that can shape our sense of self and our expectation of how events will play out or experiences will happen in relationship. For example, a child who at the age of 2 is abandoned by a parent will likely hold that fear of abandonment in a powerful way across their lifetime unless they bring that into the light of consciousness to heal it and clear it, to then be able to begin to trust again and take in new patterns in relationships. So, a lot of my work in therapy as a healer is helping myself, first of all, and others bring into awareness those things that have shaped me and led me into unhealthy patterns in my life, in my relationships, so that I can heal that, clear that, be more whole, more fully aligned with my soul self. And that is what I try to support with others. In a similar way, for us as humanity, if we don't bring to awareness these traumas and experiences that we've been through in our human history, then they tend to control us and shape how we are in our cultural constructs, our beliefs, our ways of interacting with each other collectively. Joe Dispenza says in a very powerful way that if we don't do this inner work, then we tend to be controlled by what's unconscious within us. And 90% of our actions, beliefs, behaviors then are shaped by what's in the unconscious, not by our conscious choices, but by what is hidden within us that's impacting who we are, how we act. I believe that we as humanity have been functioning unconsciously in how we have related to each other, how we've developed belief systems, how we've constructed our cultural constructs for 6,000 years now. And what do I mean by that? Part of what I think is so important is that we have a clear sense of our human history. The modern understanding of history that we're taught in schools is not true or accurate. That understanding that we've come from hunter-gatherers and been on this steady growth into more advanced ways of being to now be at the pinnacle of our development as humanity. If we look at what's going on in the world right now, I think most of us would say this is certainly not the pinnacle. This is, we as humanity are in danger of destroying ourselves and our planet. That's pretty irrational, pretty dysfunctional, traumatizing, destructive, not a pinnacle of our evolution as humanity. So, and as Elizabeth Satortis would say, all the species around us realize that you move from survival of the fittest, conquer or be conquer, into that remembrance that we're all interconnected and interdependent, so then we all thrive. Well, clearly, as humanity, we have not evolved to that more advanced level that most of the species on the planet are living from right now. And that's a big problem. But how did this happen? You know, the exploration of the precessional cycle and the understanding of its correlate in the Hindu Yuga cycle. And again, I highly recommend Bibhu Dev Misra's book, Yuga Shift, and I'll put that link below. The understanding of that larger 24,000 year cycle is that we have lived in ancient times on the planet from higher levels of consciousness than we can even conceive of right now, that led to advanced ways of being, advanced forms of technology, which involved an understanding of light and energy and quantum physics in ways that we're just beginning to understand again. When I visit ancient sacred sites in Peru, in Egypt, there are sites in Africa, in old Europe, where we see Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. We see these ancient sites that date back up to 12,000 years ago. And they are showing such advanced levels of scientific understanding, astronomy, medicine, healing, architecture, and more than that, how to relate to each other and to the life around us in harmony, in balance. Those ancient cultures knew that the path to peace and joy, the path of higher consciousness, is to live in right harmony and right balance with all that is. There's an interesting program going on right now, and the trailer, which I'll put a link to below, the summit is called Eternal Song, and it's tapping into some of the ancient wisdom and indigenous knowledge that can guide us in this time of transformation. Because the ancient cultures knew how to live in harmony, the indigenous cultures still remember and retain that awareness. There's a quote from some of the indigenous elders in that trailer. One elder says, "I am the land and the land is me. We are the land." That's that deep understanding, not at the intellectual level, but at the emotional, energetic, and spiritual level. We are one with the sacredness of all that is. There's another uh, quote from an indigenous wise elder in this trailer that really, I think, is profound. And she says that the indigenous understanding was that we are beings of beauty, living as part of the beauty around us. And the Europeans who came and conquered and colonized understood themselves not as being in beauty, but being in sin. Think about that. Not as being in beauty and in oneness with all that is, but as being in sin. In other words, thrown out of the garden in this sense of separation, needing to find salvation and redemption in the hopes of maybe coming home again, if not in this lifetime, then in the afterlife. This is the root of Christianity. The root of Christianity in its institutionalized form. I want to be clear here that I'm not devaluing Christ's teachings, Christ consciousness. What I am critiquing and what I am expressing concern about is how, as we moved into the age of Aries, approximately 2000 BCE, and the influence it had then on our movement into the age of Pisces, it meant that we moved from these mystical origins of our spiritual traditions into more and more institutionalized religions that get caught up in doctrines, beliefs, practices, power over paradigms, the power over paradigms of the age of Aries. For example, Christianity became the political religion of Rome in 380 CE, the current era. That meant then that Christianity became a power over structure and became institutionalized, which was such a distortion from the teachings of Christ. And it led us into what we've experienced around the globe with institutionalized religions getting caught in religious wars across nations, or in the case of Christianity, the inquisitions and the persecution of those who weren't adhering to the belief system identified with the political power. So that's where we get caught in distortion. And a book that I highly value, and I'll put the reference to it below, is a book by Matthew Fox called Many Rivers, One Source. And here's a quote from that book. All rivers, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, Sufi, flow from the same source. We can honor our unique streams while recognizing our shared origins. That's a paraphrased version of the theme of his book and how it is about we have one source, cosmic consciousness, this energy of source that is in us and all around us. And we may, like the energies of light coming through a prism, see that as green or blue or orange or red, but it's all coming from the same source. And I believe as we're in this process of moving into the age of Aquarius, we need to reclaim the spiritual roots of these mystical traditions and clear and release the power over paradigms and ways that they've become attached to these institutionalized structures that are actually a distortion of the deeper mystical teachings. So it was as we moved into the age of Aries that in the Hebrew Bible that became the root of institutionalized Christianity was this story of Adam and Eve being thrown out of the garden because of sin, with the serpent who had been the symbol of the ancient great goddess and the sacred feminine becoming the symbol of evil. This is how, as we move from one age to the other, these archetypes get reformed and reshaped by the belief systems of the age, but particularly in the age of Aries, when we moved into the power over paradigms based on fear, it led to these distortions in the deeper spiritual roots of those mystical traditions. And this is what we need to release today. But as Alberto Viildo used to say in the shamanic training that I did, when we as Westerners hold this sense of we've been thrown out of the garden, we carry that pain, that loss, that sense of abandonment, that sense of separation that shapes our lives. And part of his own journey of healing was working that through to so deeply remember his own interconnectedness with the sacredness of all of life that he could walk into the jungle in Peru and the birds and the animals would remain unchanged. Prior to that, he said, because of his energetic as a Westerner, carrying that sense of separation, that internal sense of I've been thrust out of the Garden of Paradise, and to think about how that affects our sense of ourselves and our connection to the earth. He said when he would walk into the jungle, the birds, the animals would all go quiet. A stranger's here, a foreigner's here, someone who's not one with us. And it was a profound experience when he could walk into the jungle and the jungle received him as one with them. This is part of the healing that we're in now. But how did we get into that sense of being thrown out of the garden? I believe, these are my reflections, that from my exploration and research, that some of what happened starting 6,000 years ago, but more intensely 5,000 years ago, as we were moving towards the end of the age of Taurus. Remember, in the age of Taurus, we retained that sense that we're a part of the oneness with all that is. We remembered the sacredness of all of life, that the villages that Maria Gimbutas explored in Old Egypt, coming from the age of Taurus, had no armaments. There were no signs of war. There was no sign of, I need to protect myself from invasion. The emphasis of the cultures from the age of Taurus was about art, creativity. I live in beauty. I express my creativity in beauty, being a part of the creativity of the cosmos and the sacredness of the earth and the life around us. But I believe starting about 5,000 years ago, starting about 3000 BCE, we experienced some Earth crises. Some believe that there was comet activity. There was certainly climate change, drought, crises on the planet that I think led to fear and trauma. And I do believe that it led to this sense of some of being betrayed by the earth, that our earth mother was no longer safe. And it's interesting that Maria Gimbutas talks about the Kurgan nomadic warriors who came from the steppes of Russia and started to invade the goddess honoring cultures and these cultures that were living in that energy of the age of Taurus. And they were fearful of the sky gods. I think they were fearful of these comets that had come and struck the earth and caused this cataclysm and this damage. And were trying to appease the sky gods in order to feel safe. So I believe what's activated our movement into the Kali Yuga is trauma. Trauma that we then coped with through fight and flight. So these increasing cultural shifts where I need to get what I need for survival, we need to fight other people to get resources, conquer or be conquered. How do we stay safe? How do we stay in control? Those are trauma responses. And sadly, this is an oversimplification, but I think it's helpful to think about this larger context. Sadly, I think we've been in these trauma patterns for the last 5,000 years. And that it's in this time of trauma that we get caught in these ways of coping, and particularly fight as a primary trauma response that ends up perpetuating the trauma then from generation to generation. We then get caught in war. We get caught in colonization. We get caught in experiences of genocide. We get caught in conquer or be conquer, this effort to control, to take others' resources, to enslave others, to destroy others, to destroy the life around us, to grasp at resources. It's this sense that the earth is not safe. It becomes this object to be exploited, and we fear each other and see people who are different from us as other, and therefore to be conquered, to be killed in order so that I and we in my group can feel safe and secure. As Barbara Hand Cloud talks about so brilliantly in her book that was originally Catastrophobia, and now it's called Planetary Awakening, if we collectively don't heal this trauma from those cataclysms that have activated this recurring trauma pattern on the planet, we are on a path where we will, in fact, destroy ourselves, as we're also causing massive destruction to the earth around us. And the earth is in her own process of healing and transformation right now. She will recover. She will take us through a cataclysmic reset if we as humanity don't wake up and heal and transform. So all of us are feeling this in the energetic on the planet right now, this karmic choice point that we're in, this critical decision point. And it's a decision point for each of us individually, as well as a decision point for us collectively. And I firmly believe that those of us who are on a path of spiritual awakening will be moving into this new earth and into this experience of healing and wholeness and transformation into higher consciousness, into becoming homoluminous ones. But we each have a choice which path, which timeline we will be on. And some may choose to resist the changes that we're being called into. Some may need to be on that path of going through a cataclysmic reset. But I also believe that if enough of us are healing and awakening and sending that energy of love and higher consciousness into the collective, we can change together. It will shift the collective consciousness. And we each can take on that responsibility and be a part of that healing grid around the globe. But this is why in my videos, I so emphasize that we have to heal the trauma from the past, individually and collectively. Collectively as humanity, if we don't face that trauma that we've been through, or see that what we're doing right now is caught around the globe in that perpetrator-victim model of trauma, then we will keep unconsciously reenacting it and keep playing it out until we self-destruct. And we can stop that now. We are getting so much support from the earth, from the cosmos. I sometimes feel like the cosmos with these astrological energies that are unfolding, with the comet that appeared in the sky poised in front of the stars of Ophiuchus saying, humanity, heal. It's like we are being given neon light signs from the cosmos guiding us through this transition time. If we listen, if we open, if we attune and come back into connection. We are the land. We are of the stars. We are interconnected with all that is. Everything around us is sacred. Everything around us is conscious. We are a part of this sea of cosmic consciousness. And when we can remember that and realize we are held in love and the wisdom of the cosmos, we've never been thrown out of the garden. That's our false belief. And I truly believe Christ, Buddha, other spiritual teachers have tried to help us remember that. The divine is in us. We've never been separated from it. We don't have to look to someone or something else to save us. We need to heal and remember who we truly are, that we are of the stars. The energy of the divine is within us. We are of the earth. The love of the earth is there supporting us and is in us. We are never alone. We have not been abandoned. We have not been thrust out of the garden. So how do we work with all of this? I, in many of my videos, talk about how powerfully present the healing centaurs have been in this accelerating time of change. And there are 4 primary healing centaurs, and I just want to name them and summarize them and how we can call on them to support us in this time. There's Chiron, that is actively engaged right now in Aries in helping us to heal our sense of self, heal the trauma from the past. And there are many who hold that Chiron energy, who are healers, who are emanating healing energy into the collective. Chiron is among us. Then there is Pholus. Pholus was that healing centaur that Melanie Reinhardt says the theme with Pholus is the lid comes off. Pholus is now in Capricorn in that powerful configuration with Ixion and Quawar, helping us to take the lid off what's been hidden, to see our trauma history as humanity, to see the chaos that we're in, and to heal and to not continue to perpetuate this destruction, violence, and trauma collectively. Nessus is in a very powerful configuration right now, conjunct the North Node in Pisces. Nessus is that healing centaur that gives us this clear story of how, if we've been traumatized and we act out of a trauma coping pattern, just as he did in his interactions with Hercules, then we perpetuate trauma and it just continues in the ancestral line, generation after generation. And Nessus is that healing centaur that says, the buck stops here, that we each can take responsibility for stopping the perpetuation of these lineage patterns that keep repeating the trauma. We can heal and change and transform that now. And I think it's very significant. Nessus is conjunct the North Node, saying this is a karmic moment for all of us to say, the buck stops here. I take responsibility for my own healing and my own clearing of those ancestral lineage wounds to move forward in a different way. And I truly believe, from a shamanic perspective, when we heal, we heal forward 7 generations and back 7 generations. I think one of the most profound centaurs is Cherlo, who's now, amazingly enough, an Aquarius and continues to be in very powerful configurations as she is in this upcoming full moon, the solstice. Cherlo is that healing centaur that knows how to hold presence, compassion, and empathy in the face of suffering. She was the partner to Chiron, who, when Chiron was mortally wounded and in daily pain and agony and unable to heal it after getting struck by the poison arrow from Hercules, Cherlo was his partner who stayed with him, holding him in love and compassion in the midst of his pain. Was she able to heal it and take it away? No. But could she hold that presence of hearing and seeing him and being with him in the midst of his suffering? Yes. And as I've mentioned in earlier videos, I came to realize that the most profound healing energy in the room when I was with a client was not saying some magical words that would bring healing or giving the right practical advice to a client. The most powerful thing that was healing, actually, for both of us was being in this healing energy of Cherlo in the room, that capacity to hold sacred presence, to truly hear and see the other. For me in my own life, when I'm in intense pain, when I'm deeply depressed, and I've gone through some really challenging times in my life and some really dark times. And what was most healing for me was not someone trying to make it better or tell me what I could do to get out of the depression that I was in, but when someone sat with me and heard me, held space for me, and just held that energy of empathic attunement and love and that experience of being seen and heard. That is profoundly healing. And I think for those of us that are empathic and sensitive and absorbing the pain and suffering in the collective, for those of us that are sensitive and empathic and feeling the pain and suffering of family members or those that we're close to or those in our community, the more we can hold that energy of staying centered in ourselves and emanating that love and compassion and capacity to hold presence and see and hear the other, that is profoundly healing. That's how we reweave a community of oneness, of coming from the heart, of being there with and for each other. So this is how we heal, to be on a path of wholeness, to come back to center. And I encourage you in terms of practical steps. I'll put the link again below, but I encourage you to use that medicine wheel meditation. I find it profoundly helpful in coming back to center when I feel disoriented, I feel overwhelmed, I feel like I've absorbed too much energy from what's going on in the collective. When we come back to center in that medicine wheel, we come back to connecting with source energy, the love and wisdom of the cosmos that reminds us we are soul selves having this human experience. We are held in the love of the cosmos. We are never separate from it. And we are surrounded by that support from our spirit guides, from the earth, from the sky, from galactic beings. We are not alone. We are in this together, and we are held in the love and wisdom that is within us and all around us. I also find it's very helpful when I'm overwhelmed to sit in meditation and do that 6-2-8 breathing practice. I love that working with numerology, you breathe into the count of 6, breathing in the energy of love, hold it to the count of 2, which I feel is moving out of polarity into unity consciousness, and then breathing out to the count of 8, releasing whatever I need to release to be back in harmony and balance. That is the path that we're on, is how we're remembering how to come back into balance, into harmony, into that remembrance of being part of the oneness of all that is. And a part of moving back into balance is releasing that false sense of separation, that we're separate from the earth, that we're separate from the sky, that we're separate from each other. Releasing that, realizing that is an illusion. Then we begin to see things differently. And when we let go of the trauma from the past and we heal individually and collectively, we see with new eyes. We don't stay caught in those unconscious coping patterns that just keep us in trauma and re-traumatization. We heal and begin to see the world and ourselves and each other differently. And then we can come from the heart, live from the heart, act with integrity, and act with truth. A lot of what we're dealing with right now, and I believe when Uranus moves into Gemini, July 7th, we're going to see incredible shifts in terms of disclosure of what's out of balance and the level of misinformation, disinformation, manipulation of the media that is going on, that is about distortion, is about lies. Ancient cultures and indigenous people understand that truth is not what we want it to be, or what we perceive it to be, or what we make it up to be, which is a current theme in modern Western cultures. For ancient cultures and indigenous people, truth is what's in alignment with natural law, what fosters harmony and balance. Remember the principles of Ma'at, who was that ancient Egyptian understanding of the harmony and balance that moves through the cosmos. The principles of Ma'at were all about, how am I living in right relationship with the waters of the earth, with the animals of the earth, with my neighbor, with the people around me? How am I operating from integrity and living in harmony and in balance? And the ancient Egyptians understood, and the indigenous people know, that when you start living in disconnection, disharmony, it leads to disaster. The root meaning of disaster is disconnection from the stars. We disconnect from the wisdom of the cosmos and the wisdom of the earth. We get caught in ego consciousness, in that sense of superiority or separation or longing for control, and chaos results. That's the deep meaning of that story of Osiris and Set. Osiris and Isis modeling what it means to live in right harmony with all that is, and Set, what it means to get caught in ego consciousness, to want to have control and power over, and the disaster and destruction that results. This is where we are as humanity right now, where we are in the collective consciousness, and what we're healing and transforming to move into new forms that are about being in balance and harmony with all that is. And a part of that means stepping out of polarization with each other, stepping out of polarization in the ways that we hold these notions and constructs that are keeping us in these trauma patterns. The polarization of right and wrong, as if They are rules or doctrines or intellectual concepts or human laws versus coming back into connection with natural law and realizing it's actually about what's in harmony versus what's in disharmony. We need to step out of the polarization of light and dark. One of the first workshop I ever taught was the wisdom of the dark, and the awareness that those ancient cultures, and again, indigenous people today, understand the wisdom of the dark. The dark is not to be feared. It's not to be illuminated with electric light so we can pretend there is no night. The dark is the time where we see the stars and connect with the wisdom of the cosmos. The dark of the moon is when the women would gather and go in the red tent and experience their menstruation, release what they needed to release, and open to the guidance coming to them from the other realms to bring back that wisdom to the community. The wisdom of the dark is when we dare to go and do that inner work and see what's hidden within us, to reclaim those lost parts of ourselves, to heal the trauma from the past, to come into wholeness, to reclaim the true gold of who we are. The wisdom of the dark is important to balance with the energy of light. And when we can step out of that polarization, we can honor the cycles of light and dark, of death and life and rebirth. We can honor that we are part of this cycle of the cosmos and not fear the wholeness and the balance of all of that. We need to get out of that polarization of white and black. White is good, black is dangerous. We know where that has led in terms of racial inequity, prejudice, violence. Interestingly, in the ancient cultures, and again, this is why it's so important that we see the context of our human history and reclaim the wisdom of the past and the indigenous understanding that never forgot the wisdom of the ancient cultures. But in the age of Taurus, for example, black was seen as the energy of life, the blackness of the fertile soil that gives birth to the plants that feed us and nurture us, the blackness of the rift in the Milky Way, which they knew was the cosmic womb, the galactic center that's given birth to all that is. The womb mirrored then in the wombs of women that dark cave from which life emerges. And caves were a place to honor that energy of the fertile void, the blackness that gives birth to all that is. White was the color of death, the bones of a body that has died and now is returning to the land. So when we can step out of these polarizations and what we've attached to them, then we reclaim a sense of wholeness and unity consciousness. And again, it's about coming back to the heart. The other polarity that we really need to step out of is that polarity between male and female, and that disconnection that's happened between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. It's in the Kali Yuga, the time where we go into our lowest level of consciousness as humanity, that we get caught in patriarchal power over paradigms. Those did not exist before then and will not exist as we're exiting the Kali Yuga. And it's not that in more ancient times it was a power reversal. These cultures that honored the sacred feminine were not matriarchal. They were matrilineal. It was the understanding that women have wombs that reflect the womb of the cosmos and the continuation of the ancestral line, that energy of the sacred feminine is about creativity. It is about giving birth. It is about the energy of infinity. We need to reclaim not only that integration of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, but we need to redefine what those energies mean. Because in the patriarchal period, not only do we get caught in this power imbalance and the patriarchal power over paradigms that have been profoundly destructive to our psyches as men and women and to our cultures. But we also need to step out of the patriarchal notion that the sacred feminine energies are of receptivity and the sacred masculine energies are of activity. It's again polarizing those energies in a way that's devaluing what they are in their wholeness. We need to reclaim the power of the sacred feminine in all of its manifestations, but particularly that power of creative life force energy, and honor that the sacred masculine in its active expression was meant to be in service to the community and in service to the sacred feminine. As Keone Hanley would say, it's the sacred feminine that's the foundation, and the sacred masculine that is then taking action from that deep connection with the sacred feminine and its energy of the remembrance of right relationship and oneness with all that is, that energy of life force creativity. So as we're in this transition, we're needing to shift from that sense of separation, that getting caught in polarization. We need to shift from left brain dominance, which tends to see things as separate, as other, to be analyzed, critiqued, or controlled, back into right brain awareness, which is that holistic understanding that everything is integrated. Everything is part of the wholeness. How do I understand the deeper meaning of things? How do I open to that relational understanding, empathy, sense of connectedness? But ultimately, it's about dropping from the mind into the heart, because it's when we're in our hearts that we can reclaim unity consciousness, that remembrance that the energy of source, of cosmic consciousness is in us and can emanate out from us. It is in all that is. It is around us. It is in us. It is below us. It is beyond us. Two other practices that I think are helpful in deepening that coming from the heart is fire ceremonies. I think ceremony is a powerful way of working with our process of healing and transformation that incorporates our whole self and incorporates what's unconscious within us as well as what's conscious. It aligns us with our soul selves. Do a fire ceremony, and it can be as simple as working with a candle or as elaborate as working with a fire pit. But allow yourself to put into the flame what you need to release, to heal, to clear, to let go of these out of balance patterns from the past, and then pull in and energize from that purifying fire what can energize you in moving into new ways of being, back into your wholeness, back into your heart. And the other practice that I've been doing a lot lately that helps me come into stillness, come back into calm when I get out of balance or feel disoriented or feel overwhelmed or feel discouraged or feel the suffering of the globe around the globe, I do that medicine wheel practice. And when I come to the center, as you'll hear in the meditation that I'll put the link below, I connect deep to the root of the earth. I connect up to the galactic center, and I attune to the rhythm of the earth. I attune to the rhythms of the sky. I honor that alignment of my soul self with the core of the earth, with the galactic center. And I allow those energies to move from the core of the earth to the galactic center, back to the core of the earth, up through my central channel, and then to emanate out, clearing whatever's out of balance in my energy field, to clear out whatever's out of balance in my body. Then I align with those energies and feel them in my heart, then emanating out of my heart, helping me feel held in love and compassion, the love and compassion of the earth and sky and cosmos. And then I can emanate that light and love and wisdom of the earth and sky and cosmos out into the collective consciousness. I can focus it on where I may want to send it in healing energy to someone I care about, or a part of the globe where there's a lot of suffering, or I just emanate it out into the collective consciousness. And then I feel that deep connection with the oneness of all that is. I feel that alignment with my soul self. I feel that I'm held in the love and wisdom of cosmic consciousness, my spirit guides, and all that is. That I and we are never alone. We are of the land, we are of the sky, we are of the sea of cosmic consciousness, we are of and part of this community of the heart, of love that we hold with and for each other. And as we can feel that and stay centered in that, we then can live in that healing way, meet every interaction we're in from the heart, from balance, from harmony, from integrity, from that truth that is about being in right relationship with all that is. Then we can hold that trust in the midst of the uncertainty of these times. We can be fluid because these times are unpredictable, uncertain, and fluid, and just know and trust that we are being guided in each moment by our soul self, by our hearts, by the energy of cosmic consciousness to do what I'm meant to do in this moment, and to continue to be in my own inner process of continually coming back to the heart, continually coming back to center, continually being in alignment with my soul self. Then we can feel that experience of joy and peace and love in the midst of the storminess of these times. Then we can feel that heart connection with and for each other, holding that healing grid for each other, for that energy around the globe. Then we and the galactic beings and the inner earth beings and the healing centaurs and the song of the energies of the spheres are guiding us all into co-creating a new earth together. Thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you for being in your own journey of living from the heart. Blessings and love to all of you. Blessed be.